Dylan.
Hello Dylan, how are you doing?
Well, he's leading so sweet.
Lael. Nice to meet you. So
She has done this before.
Timmy didn't get a book. Still not okay. How's that? Better. Okay. Okay. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is Beit Emanuel. I am a person who's been involved in the shul many years. I grew up in the shul. I'm here with my parents who brought us to the shul first, I would say, in the early 1970s. It must be about that. I went to the nursery school here, I guess, you also did leave. Can anyone put their hands up who went to the nursery school at Beit Emanuel sometime between the 1960s, 70s, 80s? It's me and Lee, nobody else. Okay. So, how wonderful to be here this Shabbat. I'm now involved with the Temple Israel in Hillbrow, but also with this shul. And so pleased to get the opportunity to lead the service tonight, and hoping very much to be doing more of that with Beit Emanuel in the coming months. So, we are going to start off with a very, very beautiful reminder, with a very, very beautiful reminder of our heritage in the form of Lechi Lach. It is not printed in the Siddur to my knowledge, but we are starting with it. Those of you who know your book of Genesis will probably know Lechi Lach as the masculine form, which is Lech Lecha. So Lech Lecha are the words that God says to Abraham in the book of Genesis. Lech Lecha mi'artecha u'mibeitecha u'mibeit avicha el ha'aretz asher arecha. You should now go, leave your father's house, leave the land which you know, and I, God, am going to lead you into the land that I will show you. So the words Lech Lecha or Lechi Lach in the feminine voice are words which say, go out to your destiny. Go out to do what God is commanding you. Lechi lach, lech lecha. Go out and do that which is your life's purpose. So over to you, Lee.
Lechi lach, to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha, to a place that you do not know. Lechi lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lechi lach. Lechi lach, and I shall make your name great. Lech lecha, and I shall praise your name. Lechi lach, to the place that I will show you. Lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lechi lach.
Lechi lach lesimchat chayim are the words of that beautiful rendition that Lee has just so beautifully sung for us. Go out to the happiness of life. Lesimchat chayim. Go out and find and feel the happiness of life. So this first part of the service is there to help us to help us to settle into the Shabbat, to help us to let go of the week, to help us to arrive towards the Shabbat. These first few songs that we sing before we do Lecha Dodi, it's not yet Shabbat, and we just ease ourselves in to the Shabbat. But before we approach the Lecha Dodi with the various songs that we are going to sing, with this opening section of the service, first what we do is we light the candles. And the candles are lit at the beginning of the service, just before the Shabbat. The idea is that on Shabbat you can't strike a fire, you can't light a match. So you light the candles just before the Shabbat comes in, which we're about to do. There is also a little tradition. It's one of those Talmudic tricks. You know, the Talmud Judaism is full of little interesting little ways of solving problems. So the problem is that once you light the candles, you're bringing in the Shabbat, but now you've lit a match. So in case you might be now using the fire on Shabbat, what you do when you say the blessing is you close your eyes so that your eyes shouldn't see that it's fire already, but it's Shabbat. So it's just one of those little Talmudic tricks that you just come around the corner, as they say, and just try to get two things right at once, even if they're slightly in contradiction. I'm going to ask Leslie Hudson if she wouldn't mind coming up to the bimah and lighting the candles for us. Leslie's been so involved in our shul for so many years. We are going to be lighting the candles, Hadlakat HaNerot, on page 118, 118.
Shana B'mitzvotah B'sivani L'hadlik Ner Shal Shabbat. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו להדליק נר של שבת.
Thank
Amen.
you to Leslie. You may be seated. Okay, so settling into the Shabbat, we are going to go on now to Yedid Nefesh on page 126. Yedid Nefesh is a very intimate song. We address God in this way. We say Yedid Nefesh, God who is the friend of my soul. I approach you. I leap like a deer to do your will.
ידיד נפש, אב הרחמן, לשחרתך, אל רצונך. ידיד נפש, אב הרחמן, לשחרתך, אל רצונך. ירוץ עבדך כמו הים, ישתחווה עמו אדונך. ירבם ידידותיך מנוף עצוב וחורצו.
On page 132, we are starting to read Psalms as we prepare for the Shabbat. Adonai malach kagel haaretz, yismachu ivim rabim, anan v'arafel svivav, tzedek v'mishpat, machon kis'o. Ohavei Adonai sin'ura, shomer nesha'ot chasadav, miyad reshaim yetzalem. Or zarua latzadik. ולישרי לב שמחה, שמחו צדיקים באדוני, והודו לזכר קודשו. Or זרוע לצדיק, light is sewn up for the righteous. ולישרי לב שמחה, and happiness for those who have clean hearts. On page 133, Psalm 98, a psalm that is well known to many of us, maybe more in its English form than in its Hebrew. Mizmor. Shir Adonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God a new song. Ki niflaot asa, for you have worked wonders. Hoshia lo yamino, uzma'a kodsho. Your right hand, your holy arm, you have won victory. Eternal God, you have shown your victory, displayed your justice in the sight of the nations. You were mindful of your love and faithfulness towards the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. On page 134. Hariu Ladonai kol haaretz. Raise a shout to God, all the earth. Pitchu veranenu vezamu. Sing praise to God with the lyre and with the melodious song.
Zamru Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol simra, b'chatzotrot v'kol shofar. Hariu lifnei HaMelech Adonai, Zamru Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol simra, b'chatzotrot v'kol shofar. Hariu lifnei HaMelech Adonai, Yirom hayom u'mlo, tevil v'yashvei bo, ne'arot yimchachot v'chol harim yaranenu. Yirom hayom u'mlo, tevil v'yashvei bo, ne'arot yimchachot v'chol harim yaranenu. Lifnei Adonai kiva, lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevil b'tzedek, v'yamim v'nesharim. Yirom hayom u'mlo, tevil v'yashvei bo, ne'arot yimchachot v'chol harim yaranenu.
So we are approaching the Lachadodi, and the last extract that we do from Psalms before the Lachadodi is the last 3 lines of Psalm 99, the Romamu, on page 135.
Adonai Eloheinu, Ishtachavu li'or kodsho, ki karu
settled in, we have started to let go of the week, and now we welcome in the Shabbat, the bride of Shabbat, this beautiful, beautiful poem written by Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, a Kabbalist, in other words, a person who studied Jewish mysticism from Tzfat, who wrote this beautiful poem, and which Jewish congregations have been singing ever since as a way of welcoming in the Shabbat. We use the metaphor of, or the poem uses the metaphor of the Shabbat being the bride, and the people of Israel are the bridegroom. And we are so keen to see our bride and to welcome her into our lives. We will sing now on page 138, and we'll rise on the last verse. We rise just on the last verse. Shabbat is now here. We can now recite Psalm 92, which is a psalm especially for the Shabbat, Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat, on page 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות. הלב מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון. כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך ארנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון.
איש ואל לא ידע, וכסיל לא יבין את זאת. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה. שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי ולא עוולת בו. On page 141, Psalm 93, Adonai malach geut lavesh. Lavesh Adonai oz hitazar, af tichon tevel bal timot. Nachon kis'acha me'az, me'olam ata. Nas'u neharot Adonai, nas'u neharot kolam, yish'u neharot dochya.
בקולות מים, מים רבים, אדירים, אדירים, משברי ים. מקולות מים, מים רבים, אדירים, אדירים, משברי ים. די, 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 אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני.
So we've come to the end of the first part of the service, which is really just the Psalms, the Pesukei de Zimra, the verses of blessing. We've settled into the Shabbat. We begin to feel the space for our neshama, the space for our soul to express itself. We are about to conclude that section as we enter the second section of the Friday night service, which is the Shema and its blessings. The Shema and its blessings start, of course, with the Baruch Hu, but the signal that we have in the Jewish liturgy to distinguish between one section or to transition from one section of the service to another is the Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish on page 144. The Kaddish here is not used as a prayer of mourning, but rather as a prayer of praise. It's the half Kaddish, the Chatzi Kaddish, and it's on page 144. Please rise.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה. אמן. ופר ודרומם ויתנשא ויתעלון ויתעלון שני דקות שבריחו ליל המנכר בחצה ושירתה תוש בחצה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה וימנו
The Baruch Hu on page 146 is the prayer the prayer that calls us to pray. It is the prayer that invites us to pray. It's recited in order to open up our space for prayer. Page 146. Page 148. The prayer after the Baruch Hu differs depending whether it's morning or evening. In the morning we say Yotzer Or, which talks about the rising of the sun and all the wonders of nature. In the evening the themes are similar. On page 148 we see those themes, but particularly the theme is around the evening, the Ma'ariv Aravim. The word evening is in fact in this prayer turned into a verb. It says that God evenings the evening. God brings on the evening. God transitions the world into nighttime. And you can hear from the way that the Hebrew works and the beautiful description in the Hebrew. You can hear that this prayer is recited by somebody who is seeing a sunset, as it talks about God rolling the day away and rolling the night in. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, bechokma poteach she'arim, uvitbuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim b'meshmoroteihem barakia, kirtzono borei yom v'layla, kolel or mipnei choshech, בחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. As we go towards the Shema now, page 150, Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. On page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. You shall love the eternal God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day, and impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them be a symbol before your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. From that paragraph of the Shema, we of course derive two important mitzvot: the mitzvah of the mezuzah, inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, and we also derive the mitzvah of the tefillin, which is the section about binding them as a sign upon your hand and letting them be a symbol before your eyes. On page 155, which is traditionally the third paragraph of the Shema, we derive the mitzvah of the tzitzit, which we are told to look at the fringes and to be reminded of all the mitzvot. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וריתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תתורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. אמת ואמונה כל זאת, all this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. On page 158, Mi Chamocha. ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. On page 160, the prayer that we recite in the evening, the prayer where we pray individually and communally for God's protection, we ask that God spreads over us, Sukat Shlomecha, the shelter of God's peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom V'hamidenu Malkeinu L'chaim Tovim U'Leshalom U'Feros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha V'takneinu V'exat tova milfanecha V'hoshienu Lema'an shemecha V'hagen ba'deinu V'haser me'aleinu Oyev dever V'cherev v'ra'av v'yagon V'haser satan milfanenu me'achoreinu Uv'tzel knafecha tastirenu Ki el shomrenu matzilenu ata Ki el melech hanon v'rachum ata U'shemor seitenu u'vo'enu L'chaim u'l'shalom Me'ata ve'ad olam Baruch ata Adonai V'pores Sukat shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Amo Yisrael Ve'al kol ha'olam. We rise now for the Amidah, for the Tefillah, on page 164. Please rise. Adonai sevataditahu v'yagiseiratecha God, open my lips, set my mouth, may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא עליון גומר חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם למען שמו ואהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. On page 168. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיים את שמחת הרב להושיע משיח הרוח ומוריד הגשם מזריח השמש ומוריד הטל מחכה חיים בחסד מקיים מתים ברחמים רבים סובב נופלים ורופא גולים ומצור אסורים ומקיים אמונתו אישי העפר מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני וחיי הכל. On page 170. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל ימי הללוך הסלע ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. On page 172. אתה קידשת את יום השביעי לשמך תכלית מעשה שמיים וארץ וברכתו מכל מכל הימים, וקידשתו מכל הזמנים, וכן כתוב בתורתך, ויחולו השמיים והארץ בכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, לכבוד שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, יוצא במנוחתנו קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, שבענו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך, וטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת. And purify our hearts, O God, to serve you in truth. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו, באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בה ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
רצה אדוני אלוהינו לעמך ישראל ותביעת מאהבה תקרבם ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך אל קרוב לכל קרב מעבדך וחנינו שחרוך עלינו ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזי שכינתו לציון.
May we be blessed that our eyes may merit to see the return of your loving presence to Jerusalem. On page 176, מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו מגן נשאנו אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך ונספר תהילתך על חיינו המסורים בידיך ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו ועל נפלאותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת ערב ובוקר בצהריים. הטוב כי לא כלו רחמך והמרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברך וישמום שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. בכל החיים יודוך סלע. יהללו את שמך באמת האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות. The prayer for peace on page 178 is Shalom Rab.
Shalom Rab al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rab al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki yatom melech adam lechol shalom. Ki yatom melech adam
seated. To make the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts acceptable to God. On page 511, we are going to recite the Misheberach. The Misheberach is the prayer for healing. The Amidah on Shabbat is different from the Amidah during the week. You know, the Amidah during the week, the Amidah is generally known as the Shmoneh Esrei, as the 18, because in the Amidah of the week, we recite 18 blessings, many of which are supplications. We are asking God for certain blessings. On the Shabbat, we omit many of those 18 prayers or blessings that are in the Amidah, because it is Shabbat, and on Shabbat we don't ask God for things, we don't ask God for blessings in that way. We don't supplicate, we don't make requests of God in that direct way. Which is why many of us as Reformed Jews don't know the full Amidah, because we hardly ever come to shul except on a Shabbat or on a Chag. And on the Shabbat and on the Chag, we omit most of the Amidah. So if you look in the Siddur at the Amidah for the week, you'll see that there are a whole lot of blessings that most of us are not familiar with. And it would be a wonderful thing actually to learn the remainder of the Amidah, because there are some very important requests and prayers and blessings in the Amidah. But the one exception that is made on the Shabbat is the prayer for healing, because one of the 18 that we leave out from the prayers that we recite of the Amidah during the week is the prayer where we request healing for people who are sick. And on the Shabbat, we do make that exception. We do supplicate, we do make a direct request of God by reciting the Misheberach, the prayer for healing, because it is so important to us as a community to ask for healing, to pray for healing for those who are sick. And therefore we turn to page 511 and we recite the Misheberach.
who blessed the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imoteno mekor habracha lamoteno. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
And to that beautiful rendition of the of the Debbie Friedman version, I'm going to add the prayer at the top of page 511. Excuse me. Before I do so, I'm going to ask people just to mention the names of those who may be in need of healing, and I'm going to just pause to do that now. Everybody can just call out the names as they wish.
Tony Ruben, Peter Posniak, Neil Russell.
Sheberach Avotenu v'imotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech et hacholim HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimaleh rachamim alehem lehachalimam ulerefuatam ulehachazikam v'yishlach lahem mahera refuah shelema min hashamayim refuat hanefesh v'refuat haguf hashta b'agala ubizman kariv Venomar, Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all those who are ill, and in particular, those whose names we have just mentioned. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion, for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, a refuah shlema. As we say together, Amen. Thank you to Leslie. So before moving towards the closure of our service, I am going to just share a few thoughts with you, because I've just returned yesterday from a short but wonderful trip to Israel. I haven't been to Israel for nearly 9 years now. And I thought I would share with you some of my impressions and some of the things that I learned during a precious week in Israel. The first thing that struck me about Israel this time was how relaxed everybody seemed to be. We sit here and we are sure that it is practically impossible to take a step. But I got there and things felt as kind of relaxed and informal as they always have in Israel. And there is a feeling of calm. But I soon learnt by chatting to everybody that everybody in Israel is very worried. Everybody. Secular people, people in the liberal Jewish movement, the Reform, the Conservative, anybody who is concerned with democracy, anybody who's concerned with the rule of law is feeling very worried. And as you no doubt have seen, hundreds of thousands of people, indeed millions of people, have been drawn into a sustained series of protests, which have gone on over the past 6 or 8 months, ever since Netanyahu announced his intention at his own behest and at the behest of his own party, but also at the behest of the very, very radical and extreme right-wing parties and religious right-wing parties with whom he is in coalition, ever since they announced their intention to, in some important senses, do away with the rule of law. Israel, as you know, does not have a constitution. It does have a Declaration of Independence, which has become an important document in these protests. But it does not have a constitution, and therefore the Supreme Court plays a particularly important role in holding laws to account. Because what is a constitutional democracy? What is a democracy? It's when the government can't pass any law that they want to, even if they have a majority. And in Israel, you know, these majorities are often wafer thin, as the one is now. But a constitutional democracy is a democracy where a parliament cannot simply pass a law just because it has a majority. That law must stand muster by the general principles, either of the Constitution or of the founding statement or of the general jurisprudence that has been built up over time. And in the case of Israel, in particular, the law must be considered by the Supreme Court to be reasonable. And if not, it can be struck down by the courts. This very week, on Thursday, Netanyahu's coalition government introduced a new law that would prevent the courts from striking down a law by striking down a law because they felt it was unreasonable, or because they felt that it was in contradiction with the established principles of law in Israel. And it is extraordinary to me how wide a range of Israelis have found that idea intolerable. And it's not simply because of this particular law, but because that is part of a whole raft of changes that Netanyahu is trying to introduce in order to entrench the power of the Prime Minister, of himself, entrench the power of a parliament, no matter how small its majority, reduce democratic protections, increase the power of the rabbinate in day-to-day life, of the religious right, in other words, in day-to-day life, and to erode democratic freedoms that have been won over time. And you can imagine the consequences of this for Palestinian Israelis, for Reform Jews, for women in general. The dangers are extraordinary. For gay people and for many other minorities, and in fact for secular people in general. And so there has been this great outpouring. I was lucky enough to briefly attend one of the protests. I didn't go to the very, very huge protest. I don't know if you saw the picture in the papers. It was epic. The size, it was attended by over 100,000 people. And what struck me about the small protest that I joined for a while was the extraordinary friendship among the people who were protesting. The spirit in which it was held. There were drums, there was singing, there were a great number of Israeli flags. Indeed, the Israeli flag has become the symbol of the protest. And all through Israel, as you drove or as you walked, you saw people hanging out of their windows, great banners that said, "We want to be free in our land. We demand democracy." Huge numbers of people hanging flags. Who would have thought that the hanging of a flag of Israel could be, seen as the symbol of these protests? But that's what it was. There were also other wonderful things. At the small protest I attended, and at many others, I'm told, the Israeli flag has been printed in pink. And so there are pink Israeli flags that are being flown as a symbol of freedom, as a symbol of gay rights in particular. Lots of discussion of women's rights, lots of discussion of the importance of the rule of law, and in fact a wide range of people who don't necessarily agree with each other on many other questions are involved in these protests, and they are huge in number. But despite these massive outpouring of opposition to what is being done, the bill passed its first reading in the Knesset on Thursday. So there is this great sense, although Israel feels as relaxed and informal as it always has, there is this great sense of unease that something epochal is happening, that something is happening from which there is no return, that something is happening that could truly change the nature of the society, and that if it isn't stopped now, it may become impossible to do so. There is also a great deal of discussion among ordinary people about demographics, because what's happening is that religious families have many children, and secular families have very few. And a lot of religious people, and particularly right-wing religious people, are moving to Israel, mostly from America, but from other countries too. And so the number of very religious people is growing, and the number of secular people over time is projected to diminish. And so the very demographics of Israel may indeed be changing. One thing that is hardly mentioned, however, at the protests is the question of the occupation. And the occupation of the West Bank, the settlement, the ongoing and intensive settlement of the occupied territories, occupied since 1967, has intensified and is ongoing, and is reaching, I think, or many people think, I'm told, a point where it will be practically impossible to undo, which means that a two-state solution becomes practically impossible, except if the Palestinian state looks like something like Botswana, little pieces of land disconnected from one another. People don't mention this in the protests because some do. My sister Louise, who's a professor at Hebrew University, attends these protests with some of her friends, and they always take posters which emphasize the opposition to the occupation, because life for Palestinian people in the West Bank has become more and more untenable. And if you want to read a really good book about Israel as it is at the moment, really the best book about Israel that I've ever read, written in fact by an Irish person, a non-Jew, is a book called A Paragon, it's A-P-E-R-O-G-O-N, a paragon, which is, I didn't know this, a shape, a paragon. It's a really brilliant book which will give you great insights. It's a book about a friendship between an Israeli man whose 12-year-old daughter was blown up as she walked along the street shopping with her friends by a Palestinian suicide bomber. A friendship between him and a Palestinian man whose 9-year-old daughter was shot by an Israeli soldier in a village in the occupied territories as she came out of the shop where she went to buy sweets at break in her school uniform. And the friendship that has grown between these two men, and the organization that they both helped to run, which is an organization of parents, Palestinian and Israeli parents, who have lost children to the conflict, and yet have managed to band together in friendship and jointly campaign for an end to this horror. So there's all that complexity that is going on inside Israel, and really is a pivotal moment for the country. There's so much to tell and so little time, but I will just mention that this year would have been the 100th birthday of Yitzhak Rabin, Zichrono Livracha. Yitzhak Rabin, who came so close to making a peace deal. And because it would have been his 100th birthday this year, there is an exhibition at Ben Gurion Airport as you leave about the life of Yitzhak Rabin. A very moving and beautiful exhibition, which I was very glad to have been able to see. But what is so heartbreaking about the exhibition is that you know that the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin some nearly 30 years ago was a turning point in the history of Israel, from which it was not possible to return. It changed the prospect of peace entirely. It was an assassination by a right-wing religious Jew. And you just have the sense that again we are at one of those inflection points, and that we are reaching this crossroads, which we must confront, and which may well determine very much about the future of Israel, such an important place to us all. There are many joys of being in Israel. There are many delights of being in Israel. It is such a vibrant, such a friendly, such an exciting place. I found people so engaging, so friendly. Gone are what I associate with Israel, the sort of more brash, more sort of aggressive kind of culture that I remember from many years ago. And I feel it's been replaced by a more gentle culture, at least from the short visit that I made. The joy of hearing Hebrew being spoken all around me. I was delighted to find that my Hebrew has held up fairly well, and it was really, it's a wonderful experience to be in Israel, to walk the streets on Friday afternoon, to smell the challah baking everywhere, to meet people in Israel from all walks of life, and to get to experience just a little bit of the vibrancy of that society. I was also lucky to interact with some of the members of the Reform community. I was there for the bar mitzvah of the son of a friend of ours, and the person who came along to do the music was somebody who grew up in the Reform shul Kol HaNeshama, who knew all the same tunes, who sang all the same melodies, and it was really wonderful to feel that kinship that we have with Reform Jews in Israel and around the world. And such an exciting time to be part of a group of people in Israel who are trying to offer an alternative at the very time when the secular and religious people are more divided than ever. I really do feel that liberal Judaism, Reform Judaism, progressive Judaism is a way of bridging those divides, that we can experience the wonder, the blessing of our tradition, and yet participate in modern life, that we do not have to reject modern life, we do not have to reject science, we do not have to reject education, but we can still find a way, as we have this evening, to sit together as Jews and to praise God, to create space for the neshama, to create a process in which we can magnify the light that we find within ourselves, in which we can build bridges with other people, bridges between Palestinian Israelis and Jewish Israelis, and in time, please God, also bridges between Israelis and those who are living in the occupied territories. So a really wonderful blessing it was for me to walk through the old city of Jerusalem, to eat the wonderful food that is on offer in Israel, to get a little glimpse of day-to-day life, and to experience the incredible blessings of life in Israel after 75 years of the state of Israel, and to hope and pray that the point at which we are now is a point that will be a point of healing rather than of destruction, that we are able to see in Israel a country and a state being built in which democracy is upheld and extended also to the occupied territories, in which the rights of women are upheld and extended, in which the rights of gay people are upheld and extended, in which the rights of Palestinian Israelis are upheld and extended, in which democracy is upheld and extended. I fear that we have a great battle on our hands, and I really salute all of those Israelis and others around the world who are doing so much to try to make sure that this turning point is a turning point for the good and not for the bad. Perhaps as we all get a chance to chat sometime, we can talk more about some of the amazing dynamics of life that is going on in Israel now. But for now, I'll just conclude by saying that we read earlier on in our Siddur, we read every week, we say, we ask that our eyes may behold the return of Zion to Jerusalem. And in particular, we ask that our eyes may behold the return of the Shekhinah to Jerusalem. The Shekhinah is traditionally understood as the feminine aspect of God. Of course, God is genderless, but we attribute feminine and masculine attributes to God. And the Shekhinah is one of the terms for God, or one of the aspects of God that we say in our tradition. The Shekhinah is the feminine aspect of God, by which we mean it is the most compassionate and gentle sides of God. And I think it's not a coincidence that the prayer says that we ask that our eyes may behold the return of the Shekhinah to Jerusalem, that we ask to see the return of the most compassionate, the most gentle, the most peaceful side of Hashem and of ourselves to Jerusalem. Amen. And so may it be. We are going to conclude our service. So we are going to conclude our service with all right, I'll tell you what my dilemma is. So, and let's introduce a little debate to the shore, one that might be resolved over time. And that is just to say that the Aleinu is a prayer that is not recited by all congregations. Some of the words of the Aleinu, some of them are really very precious. For example, the notion of Tikkun Olam is mentioned in the Aleinu, and I think nowhere else anywhere in the Siddur. But the Aleinu also has text in it which is quite exclusionary and which seems to suggest that Jews are in some senses on a higher plane than others. So I was talking actually to somebody in Israel who's involved in a congregation there who says that they no longer recite the Aleinu, but what they rather do is they take the word Aleinu. The word Aleinu means it is our responsibility, it is upon us, and rather spend time thinking about what we consider our responsibilities to be. What is it that we take upon ourselves? What is upon us to do? And that they use that instead for the Aleinu. But for tonight, I think we'll recite the short Aleinu. I'm going to ask somebody to remind me what page it's on.
586.
Thank you so much. On page 586, I'm going to ask you to stand for a short Aleinu. And then we're going to remain standing as we move towards the Kaddish prayer. Aleinu l'shabach l'adon hakol, l'tetur l'yotzer bereshit, shelo asanu haratzot, velo zamalu kemishpachot ha'adamah, shelo samchatenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu kore'im, u'mishkachim u'modim, לפניהם הפקקים כקדוש ברוך ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא כי יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו We are moving towards the recital of the Kaddish prayer. In a moment, I'm going to invite anyone who has Yotzat tonight to come up and lead the Kaddish as mourners. Thanks to Paul Davis. Will you read? I'll be very grateful. Paul is going to read for us the names of the people for whom we have Yotzat tonight. Just before he does that, I'm going to read on page 593. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows, it is radiant with warmth and beauty, but soon it fades or is extinguished. Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance and our lives are full. But as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen, and yet we must not despair. For we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives, we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. Thank you.
I read the names of Stanley Kaminsky, brother of Merle Kaminsky Ovens, Frederikus Challand, father of Virgil Challand, Hector Adelso de Leon Amezquita, grandfather of Osias Ayerdi, Philip Friedberg, father of Diane Fine, Simon Hochschild, father of Lee Greenblatt and Graham Hochschild, and remembered by the Beit Emanuel congregation, Inga Joseph, mother of Peter Joseph, Hilary Leon, cousin of Sidney Bass, Ray Rosenthal, mother of Graham Rosenthal, Otto Schroeder, father of Rosalie Burrich, Zalman Weiner, husband of Audrey Weiner, father of Rene Weiner, Pearl Wolfson, grandmother of Joe Turpin and Sam Turpin. May their memory be for a blessing.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. And I'll invite those who have your type tonight or anyone in mourning who would like to come to the front to please do so. We're going to recite together on page 598. Yit gadol v'yit chadash shmei rabbah v'yalwad yivrach yiruteh v'yamlik malchuteh v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayeh b'chol beit Yisrael v'galav b'zman kariv v'imru amen Yehei shmei rabbah v'vorach le'olam olamei almaya Yitbarach v'yishchabach v'yitpa'ar v'yikromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei b'kudsha v'yitku Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Ta'amiran ve'alma ve'imaru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya v'chai alelu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imaru amen Oseh shalom v'romav U'ya'aseh shalom alelu ve'al kol Yisrael v'al kol ha'olam ve'imaru You may be seated. Lee has made a wonderful choice, I think, to conclude our service with Shalom Aleichem on page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech
inviting the children. Now, children are defined as anybody under 18 or anyone who really wants a Kit Kat to come forward for the final benediction, for the final blessing. Come on, kids. If you don't come forward, you won't get a Kit Kat.
Alright, I'll tell you what, I'll redefine it as young people. Anyone who considers himself to be a young person. Are you young?
Let's bless the children together. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elayich v'yasem lach shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God cause His light to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God turn His presence towards you and give you peace. Amen. So may it be for us all. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you very much.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat